All righty, so we are live, and welcome everybody for joining us tonight. So today, yep, they're going up quick. Today was quite the day, weather-wise. My goodness.
Oh yeah, yep.
Like spring all over again. I love it.
I never got out today. There's so many webinars now. We've got another one tomorrow, 2 today.
Yeah.
Well, the one this morning was 2.5 hours. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's took the whole morning. Yeah, I headed out for just a little bit during lunch just because it was so nice. So it's getting to be that if it stays nice like this, which I know it's not, but when it gets to be nice like this, I'll get back to work on my front porch. So I'll be outside.
it's
very nice.
Relatively nice Saturday and Sunday, and Monday looks even better.
Ah, good.
The holiday day.
Oh, what holiday is it?
President's Day.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. Boy, that snuck up on me.
Federal holiday, no mail.
That's right. That's right. No mail. No bank. All right. So we'll get started in just a few minutes. We're just going to give people some time to join.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to get more because we're at 30 now and there are over 100 registered. So
yeah.
People are waiting to finish their dinner. They got to have their dessert.
Oh, sounds good to me. Or have dessert first and skip the dinner. That's always okay.
Backyard forestry in 90 minutes.
Hi, Elmer. Elmer has arrived.
Elmer's on. Okay. Hi, Elmer.
If anybody else wants to pop in and say hello in the chat, we'd love to hear from you. And we will get started in just a few minutes. And Clark is calling or popping in from Arizona. I don't even want to know. Let's see, if it was 60 here, was probably like 80 in Arizona. I'm sure he'll let us know soon.
I lost my arrows at the bottom again.
Do what you did the last time. Hi, Mike. Mike Lamana saying hi.
What did I do?
The last time you press the arrow.
There it is. Okay.
There you go. Yeah, I don't know why it goes away. Oh my goodness, he had 65 in Arizona. Ha! There you go. So what do you think? Should we get started? And we're recording this, so people can always pop in.
Let's wait another minute or so.
Okay. So hi, Susan from Morristown. How are you today? So he is gloating, 78 degrees from Arizona.
I'm just happy that we haven't had more snow.
Yeah. And Wendy's saying hi from Vernon. That means she's a neighbor of Elmer's, right?
A little colder up there.
Yeah. And much. Robin. Hi, Robin. I haven't, with no in-person member meetings, I haven't seen Robin in a couple of years. So it's good to have you here today. And Clark is heading to Las Vegas.
That's where he's going to leave his money.
There you go. And Christine from South Brunswick. Anne-Marie agrees with your no snow philosophy.
Yeah, I don't normally mind the cold so much, but the snow gets to be hey, you can't drive around it and stuff. It's just
right. I'm not a fan of ice. I can take a little bit of snow, but the ice is a little iffy. So, all right, Andy, I say we get started so we can be respectful of people's time. So just real quick, wanted to welcome everybody again to, let's see, we're February's Backyard Forestry in 90 minutes online. So we're glad you're here. My name is Lori Jensen. I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Forestry Association, and I'm going to hand it right over to Andy Kimm, who is our current president. So Andy, take it away.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this month's presentation. We're going to be talking about farmland assessment on Woodlands, multiple benefit activities, because there's so much more that goes into this that so many people benefit from. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to dispense with the normal advertisements that we have at the beginning of this. We'll have them at the end. So anyway, welcome everybody. And what we will do is we will jump right into this. Hope everybody can see this. Talks a little bit about the New Jersey Forestry Association. I think you've all seen this before. We've been around for a long time, and typically we have been supporting the interest of private woodland owners, but we're going beyond that now. So we're really trying to advocate for healthy forests throughout the state, not just privately owned, but all forests in the state. Here is a list of our officers of the Forestry Association. Number of the members of the board of directors are on this call today. And at the bottom there, we have Lori Jensen, our executive director. And I would really like to thank Lori for helping me with this presentation. We've done various editions of this presentation, but we've made some changes that we feel are important that everybody who's interested in protecting forests needs to see. So Lori, thank you very much for all your help with this. The purpose of this session is to educate woodland owners and New Jersey residents on farmland assessment and all the benefits that are derived from woodland management. Here we go. One of the problems that we've had in New Jersey, or that we do have in New Jersey, is we are the most densely populated state in the nation. Despite that, 42% of our forests, of our land area is now still forested. 60% of that is privately owned. So those of us who are private woodland owners really have a lot of impact on forests in the state. We talk about farmland assessment. Farmland assessment came about because New Jersey was losing too much of its open space. And back then they considered it primarily farmland. And trying to come up with a way, you're losing 50, 60,000 acres a year to development. We were going to go from the garden state to the asphalt state. So what the legislature decided to do is to come up with a farmland assessment constitutional amendment, which was approved in 1963 by a margin of 2-1. So it's a pretty significant margin. The implementing legislation was then put into effect the next year in 1964. One of the reasons that we were losing so much open space, farmland in New Jersey, was because the landowners could not afford to continue to run their farms and pay the tax. The tax burden on properties was getting to a point that was too high for people, and they were selling their land because they couldn't afford to keep it and farm at the same time. If you look at a historical perspective, the original Farmland Assessment Act and the implementing legislation called for gross income of $500 for a farm or a woodlot. That changed as well. In 1986, that changed with the woodland having to get a woodland management plan. In addition to just managing and having income, there had to be a management plan on woodland. A little bit different, I guess, than what you'd have on regular farmland, but and we'll get into some of the other things that have evolved. And this whole thing has evolved when you go from a very basic income requirement of $500 to where we are today. There's been an evolution over the last almost 60 years of where we are with farmland assessment, and the advantages now and the improvements and the importance of farmland assessment on woodlands. In 2013, the Beck bill changed the income requirement. Originally it had been $500. The Beck bill changed it to $1,000 on the first 5 acres and $5 an acre after that. Forestry Association was successful in working with Jennifer Beck to keep the woodland income requirement at $500 for the first 5 acres and 50 cents an acre on the acreage beyond the first 5. That led to some other questions. In 2015, the Division of Taxation further modified the income requirement on woodlands with what is known as the mixed use memo. The mixed use memo said that any property, even if it was predominantly woodland, if there were 5 acres or more of cropland, the landowner had to meet the $1,000 gross income requirement. So regardless of how many acres you have of woodland, if you have 5 acres or more of cropland, you do have to meet that $1,000 minimum. And then it's $5 an acre for each additional acre of cropland and 50 cents an acre for the woodlands above that. So it's a little tricky on some of that stuff. The forest stewardship program was something that the state came up with because one of the things that was happening with some, particularly with the smaller woodlots, there was, to meet the income requirements, meant that the landowner had to cut trees that were probably not mature enough, and it was premature cutting. So what the forest stewardship program did was it eliminated unnecessary cutting, eliminated the income requirement. So property owners who take that route of forest stewardship do not have to make income. They don't have to cut prematurely, but they do have other criteria that they have to meet with their program. So some of the benefits that we have seen as a result of farmland assessment is, you look at some of the numbers here, you look at how much land was lost from 54 to 59, and then from 59 to 64. You're talking about more than 500,000 acres of farmland that was lost. As soon as farmland assessment took effect, you can see there from 10 years, from 86 to 95, only 43,000 acres were lost, and from 95 to 2002, 47,000. Unfortunately, we do not have more current, we haven't been able to get the current since 2007. We don't know what the numbers are, but we do know that farmland assessment has been successful in reducing the loss of open space in New Jersey. And it's important to recognize that it's the government that has recognized the importance of farmland and open space to the state. And I'll move my little bar here. Okay. All righty. So some of the benefits we know already is that agricultural activity in New Jersey has increased. Our woodlands have been preserved and are managed, which many of us believe the management is important. Wildlife has been enhanced, and we are continuing to provide clean air, clean water for the people of New Jersey. And that's because of we're not the asphalt state. So some of there are benefits that derive not just to the landowner, but to the population as a whole. So one of the things that's happened is municipal tax rates have been stabilized, and the properties that are farmland assessed require minimal municipal and particularly school services. So when you've got open space, you've got farms, you've got woodlots, there are not as many school children as you would have if all that land became developed. And we'd like to give a couple examples of the societal benefits from farmland assessment. And this is a study that was done back in 1988 in Montgomery Township, where they looked at a lot that was 18 acres, 16 lots. They built 16 houses on that property. So when you look at the farmland assessment, the taxes that were paid, $126, but when the houses were built, they yielded $62,000. Well, the cost to educate each student was $6,000. There were 16 students. So the total amount to educate those students was $97,488, which is well above the $62,000 that they were collecting in tax revenue on those houses. So what we are calling the development deficit, the other properties in town were subsidizing those new houses to the extent of $34,820. We like to call that the school development deficit. And when we look at this, we are looking at this as the difference just in schools. There are other, as we mentioned earlier, there are other services that towns provide that really open space doesn't need. So it's important to recognize that this is the minimum that's being saved. And again, it's a benefit to everybody. And here's one that's a little bit more recent, 2013 Green Township, similar type thing. The taxes that were paid by the under Farmland Assessment were 284, 285. When houses were built, it came up to 29,000. But you can see here the cost of educating students is going up dramatically. So there were 5 students, 888,655. The cost to educate those students. There's only 29,000 that was being collected from those houses. So the school development deficit in this case was $59,000. And again, that does not include other services that the town provides. So this is to stress the importance from a purely financial standpoint, that by not developing this property, it's a benefit to the taxpayers of those particular locales. So when we get involved, there are a number of organizations that get involved in managing forests. One of the programs that one of the agencies that we're working with to a great extent, and more so recently as time progresses, is NRCS, National Resource Conservation Service, division of the USDA. So here again, we're looking at more than just saving open space here. Eight bullet points here of what a healthy forest does and what managing forests do. So you're going to improve and sustain forest health, reduce damage from pests, initiate forest stand regeneration, reduce fire risk, restore and maintain natural plant communities, improve wildlife and pollinator habitat, alter quality of water, and maintain carbon. And the whole study of carbon is relatively recent, not as fully as understood as it will be as time progresses. We did do a session on carbon storage with Jason Grabowski, one of our earlier sessions, but it's something that is being studied. But it is important to recognize that forests are an important saving of carbon. So when we get into the specifics of farmland assessment, to be able to qualify, a landowner must have a minimum of 5 acres of qualifying land. Qualifying land will be land that is pretty much doesn't have anything on it but open space. If you had 5 acres and you had a house, the house takes up at half an acre, whatever, you're not going to qualify because you have to have 5 acres. So it's 5 acres or more of qualifying land, basically farmland or forest. We talked about the Beck bill earlier that raised the annual income requirement from activity, income producing activity, to $1,000 for the first 5 acres, $5 for each additional acre. And as we said, the Forestry Association was successful in working with Jennifer Beck to keep the annual income from woodland activity at $500 plus 50 cents. Since we have crops, but our crops are 120 year cycles. So we were able to do that. And again, we go back to the mixed use memo that came out from Treasury people a few years ago. If you have 5 acres or more of cropland, regardless of how many acres you have of forest, you do have to have that $1,000 annual income. So that is a difference that has applied. So we start looking at forest products, and traditionally we've looked at timber and firewood, maybe nuts, maybe maple syrup. There are other items that you probably could consider producing from your woodlot, but you really need to have a conversation with your tax assessor. They do look at different things that you need to look at. One of the things you look at is mushrooms, which it has to be managed. Mushrooms typically are not managed unless it's shiitake mushrooms. So again, that's why you have to have a conversation with a local tax assessor and see what that person will permit as part of your managed activities. When we look at the management plans, there are a variety of ways to manage your property, and now with the management plans that are being prepared for individual properties, we like to say plan your work and work your plan. And then the other thing is that there has to be active management on the plan. You just can't fill out some paperwork, fill out an application, and just let the land sit there. You have to actively manage the property, and there have to be established goals. And the people in the state who are going to be monitoring your property are going to be looking at your plan. They'll be looking at the goals, and they're going to look at how well you are achieving those goals. So there are basically three types of management plans for forested properties. The original woodland management plan is still the basic plan that can be prepared. More recently, as we said earlier, the forest stewardship plan came about because it does not require income. So as you can see here, it was designed to sustain the productivity of the forest land and its natural resources in perpetuity. And we like to really stress that in perpetuity. This is not just a simple, we're going to do this for 10 years or whatever, because these plans are all 10-year plans. But the objective of particularly the forest stewardship plan is to sustain the productivity in perpetuity. The third type plan is the NRCS CAP plan. You will notice there is an asterisk behind that. Lori and I sat through a 2.5-hour program this morning by NRCS because they are changing the CAP plan, and it's going from one management plan. It's divided into two sections. So if anybody is interested in the NRCS plan, the important thing is to get in touch with a consulting forester and have them explain to you what you need to do if you are interested in the NRCS plan. One of the benefits of NRCS is if you qualify and you apply to them, you can get reimbursement for the preparation of your management plan. Management plans are not free. Management plans are prepared by approved consulting foresters who are trained to go through that stuff, and you're going to have to pay them to do that. NRCS can help with the cost share on that. So one of the things that you'll look at when you look into the regulations for the forest stewardship plan, some of these things you'll notice are in quotes. Management of the forest land and its natural resources under the plan shall be based on the principle of conservation. Again, we are stressing conservation, and this is a quote that came right out of the documents prepared by the state. And you'll again see that it's designed to sustain productivity in perpetuity. Again, there are those two words, in perpetuity. This is something that's meant to be a long-running, if not forever, management of property. So again, that's an important part of what we are doing. And the plan shall prescribe active management to sustain and enhance forest productivity and yield of ecosystem services. Again, we're looking at quotes directly from the state documents that put together the forest stewardship program. And very importantly, when you get into the forest stewardship plan, it eliminates excessive and unnecessary cutting. And again, like we said earlier, people were, someone had a relatively small lot and they had to cut some trees to meet the farmland assessment requirement, financial requirement. People were cutting trees before they were at their mature level. And if you had to generate $600 to pay to meet the requirement, and it takes 2 trees, say, to cut a cord of wood, you're cutting 6 trees or more to meet that. Trees are being cut that should not have been cut. So the whole idea behind, or one of the whole ideas behind forest stewardship, was to eliminate the excessive and unnecessary cutting. One of the things we like to do also is to talk about a management plan. A management plan is pretty comprehensive. This is a copy of the front page of a management plan. That was the forest stewardship plan that was put together by the Forest Service. It's kind of funny. It's good humored. This is the Jetson property in Andover, and it's owned by George Jetson and his family. And it was prepared by Gomez Adams. He was the consulting forester. So a lot of fun went into this, but this is an actual management plan that was prepared for property in Andover that's actually owned by the Forest Service. Total acreage is 21 and the forested acreage is 18.25. You will see we've got two arrows there. When a management plan is prepared, it is prepared by a consulting forester. The plan, when it is submitted for approval to the state, is signed by the owner. I might stress also it has to be an owner. If there's somebody who is leasing property, the lessee is not the one who signs, it is the owner who signs. It is also signed by the forester who prepared it, and the society is certifying that the plan meets the requirements of the program. When you go through the program, and this particular document is 27, 28, 30 pages, there's a lot of what goes into this plan. It's a 10-year plan, and it talks about the very that will take place. It gives a description of the property when the plan was prepared, and it talks about the goals and objectives that they hope to attain over a 10-year period. And they will look at I think in this one they have 2 or 3 different forest stands, and there's a 10-year plan for each stand. It says stand 1, year 1 we will do this, year 2, year 3, and so forth. Stand 2, same thing. So it's a very comprehensive program that needs to be followed. And again, there is a consulting forester involved, and certainly this is a program that has to be approved by the state. State Forest Services will look at each plan, and they will approve each plan, or they may go back to the forester and the landowner and say, we don't agree with this, it needs to be tweaked. But again, these plans are very comprehensive. So when you start getting into them, there are goals that are established within each plan. And again, here you'll see that the property is going to be managed with the assistance of a professional consulting forester. And again, we're looking at long-term sustainability, and we talked about in perpetuity. These plans are 10-year plans, so certainly going to get through the 10 years. And managed in accordance with the best management practices, and that's something that the consulting foresters, they go to school for that. So again, we're trying to maintain and improve the health and vigor of the woodlot, and then a variety of ways we do that. We've got the silviculturally improve the woodlot through forest stand improvement, FSI, used to be called TSI, now it's forest stand improvement. Controlling invasives, native plants, and we all know that there are a lot of them running around, and that is a real tough thing to do these days. Selective timber harvest at appropriate time, and the key there is the appropriate time. You just don't go in and cut trees for the sake of cutting trees. And as part of any management plan, there will be talk about where and when and to what degree, depending on the goals that are set up between the consulting forester and the landowner. And if you need to, plant trees for regeneration, if the natural generation isn't sufficient to maintain the forest again in perpetuity. So you can harvest a variety of different things, produce maple syrup, timber, firewood, whatever. But you're trying to improve the aesthetic qualities. You're trying to maintain woodland acres. And in some instances where there's property that was once upon a time, maybe it was a field, the pasture or whatever. A lot of that now is becoming woodland. And again, if you look at the history of woodlands in New Jersey and in the Northeast, if you look back to 1900, most of New Jersey and most of the Northeast was completely cut over. So the forests that we have today are forests that are really 120 years old. And one of the problems we have there is that they are even aged forests. And one of the things you're trying to develop is a diversity of species and a diversity of age. And that's one of the challenges that woodland owners have, is to create through various management practices, how do you create a diverse forest on your property? We want to protect soil and water resources, and then you've got the pests that you want to try and get rid of, whether it be insects or plants. And again, we get involved in, we talk about wildlife habitat. One of the things that you'll see is that as our forests have gotten older, as we've had things like too many deer, as the forests mature, you don't get necessarily the young forest growth underneath that sustains a variety of different species of birds and animals. That's part of what happens. So you want to perform activities on your property that might, again, have a diverse woodlot, so that you are having a variety of age, a variety of species. And when you talk about the variety of species, one of the problems you'll see in certain places with things like the emerald ash borer, if there's a forest that is nothing but ash, and the emerald ash borer goes through, you have nothing but a bunch of toothpicks standing up. And that's one of the things we want to prevent. That's why we want diversity of species and diversity of age. One of the things that landowners can also do is they can have coordination of activities with their neighbors. One of the problems with New Jersey, as well as some other places, but particularly in New Jersey, where there used to be large open space areas, they've been divided up as families have children and grandchildren. Properties get subdivided. Some of it goes into development, whatever. We don't have the contiguous open space in one ownership, and it's important for neighboring properties to work together to come up with plans that will benefit everybody. And then, of course, for the individual property owner, you want them to qualify for farmland assessment. And then you have work your plan, realize multiple benefits, because the benefits that come out of this are substantial for everybody. When a landowner, whether a farmer or woodland owner, is involved in farmland assessment, it's important that they document their activities. Now, certainly, if you're a forest landowner and you've got a consulting forester, there are going to be, you're going to have the plan. There will be an annual conversation you will have with your forester. That's all well and good, but just as added support for your activities, you probably want to take some pictures of what you're doing. If you have any contracts with people who are doing any work on your property, you want to make sure you keep that, and then keep copies of any checks or orders that you prepare for any of the products that may come off the property. When you get involved in farmland assessment on woodlands, it becomes a little bit, I don't want to say burdensome, but it is involved, and there are several things that have to be completed and submitted. The basic FA1, which is the farmland assessment application, needs to be prepared. In addition to that, if you have woodlands, you have to complete a WD1, the woodland data form. There is a supplemental gross sales form that you have to submit that talks about the income that you're going to be getting from that property or the activities that you're going to be doing it. And in the case of a woodland property, you also have to have an activity map. Now, you will find in some parts of the state, there will be individual tax assessors who might require additional information. There's some movement to try and reduce the information the assessors are looking for, because everything that you're doing should be included in the FA1, the WD1, the supplemental, and the activity map. So the basic farmland assessment application has to be filed by August 1st of every pre-tax year. So in 2022, we will be filing August 1st for the 2023 tax year. If you don't meet that August 1st deadline, you're out of luck. They are not going to be, you have to have it in before August 1st. So it's very important that you get those people who have farmland assessment applications, they get them in a timely fashion. You'll see here also that if it's farmland assessed acres on woodland, it's being assessed under a woodland management plan or a forest stewardship plan. And again, you see there the forest stewardship plans became effective in 2019. So that's one of the applications that has to be submitted. And on the application form, there's all kinds of, there's 2 pages of application, 2 pages of explanation. In addition to the basic application for farmland assessment, woodland owners also have to prepare a woodland data form. This is another application, another 2-page application, and again, 2 pages of instructions. The woodland data form is, again, it's filled out by the property owner, but it gets involved in talking about the specific forest management practices that will take place on the property. And they're the items that the specific items that they list that could be considered, don't have to be, but some of them would be forest stand improvement, FSI, which we talked about earlier, harvest, reforestation, weed brush control, insect disease control, site preparation, prescribed burn, invasive species control, which is very important, wildlife habitat improvement, and forestry infrastructure. So those are the basic categories that are on the woodland data form that the woodland owner would be explaining what they're going to do, how many acres they're going to do it on, what kind of productivity they expect to get out of it. And they're also asking for what the expenses would be. So they're looking for the income from it as well as the expenses that are anticipated. The woodland data form, first page is basically what I just went over. The second page is certification by the woodland owner. And again, this is another document that is signed by the consulting forester. So it's not just a simple, things get a little bit more complicated as this whole process has evolved, has become more, the process has become more involved, become a little bit more task intensive. But it's important that we do these things because we're trying to measure, outcomes. It's not just a matter of, like I said earlier, you're not just trying to make $500. There's a whole lot more that goes into the management of these properties. The other thing that you will be asked the woodland owner or the farmland, this is the supplemental farmland assessment gross sales form. And this is just to explain what kind of gross sales people are anticipating. And again, you'll see at the top here, if there's a WD1, you have to check whether it's a woodland management plan or a forest stewardship plan. So, they're looking for a lot of information, but again, they're looking into the effective management of these properties. So again, it's much more than it was. So some of the important assessment criteria that goes into determination if a property will be or continue to be assessed under farmland assessment is active devotion and dominant use. Those are a couple of phrases that are used throughout the documentation and the regulations for farmland assessment. Actively devoted, this is interesting. The threshold for actively devoted is determined by a landowner's ability to meet a minimum revenue requirement. We've got and that should probably be and or what is being done on the land. This came out of the original farmland assessment documentation before we got into forest stewardship, because now if you have a forest stewardship plan, you do not have to have a revenue, but you have to have a plan and you have to follow that plan. So you have to be actively devoted. You can't just fill out some paperwork, send it in, and then forget about it for 10 years. You have to be actively devoted to the management of your property. Dominant use, this gets a little tricky as well. The dominant use of the property has to be horticulture or agriculture. You can't be doing a lot of other things on the property. And we have a tax court ruling down in Atlantic County. This was a case where there was a property, I believe it was about 18 acres, and it was open space. The owner was barely meeting the requirements of income requirements for farmland assessment, but the owner then decided that they were going to contract with a cell tower company, and they put a cell tower in the middle of the property, and the cell tower generated a tremendous amount of income. The tax assessor denied farmland assessment because he said the dominant use was the cell tower, was not the honey that was being produced from the property. the income that came about from the result of the cell tower was way beyond the bare minimum of their meeting with the honeybees. So dominant use becomes a very important case. You have to pay attention to what you're doing. And again, you've got to be working you have to have a plan, you got to work the plan. So when we get involved in working management plans, managing our forests, managing our property, there are several groups of people who are involved in this. It's not just the tax assessor and the landowner. It's extremely important that there be a consulting forester involved in a woodland management plan. So landowner has to retain a consulting forester. In conjunction with a consulting forester, they will create a plan. The plan will have goals and objectives that the landowner wants to see accomplished on the property. And every plan will be different. Every landowner has different objectives for their property. Some do not want cutting, some do want cutting, and some will allow cutting. Maybe you want to get rid of invasives. You need to look at whether you want a forest stewardship plan or a basic woodland management plan. Those are all things that the landowner will go over with the consulting forester. As we said earlier, the completed applications have to be submitted no later than August 1st. Again, if you don't get in by August 1st, you're going to lose it for that year. And again, the plan should be talking about active devotion. So if you once you have your plan, like we said, plan your work your plan. Make sure that the activities that are specified in your plan are actually followed through on. If you have questions, you might want to consult with the local tax assessor. I believe that it's important to have a good relationship with the tax assessor. You don't want to get into arguments and difficult situations. It's important that you have a good relationship with the tax assessor. And there will be monitoring on this too as well. It's not just between the landowner and the consulting forester. There are other people involved who will be looking at monitoring the success of your meeting your objectives. Consulting forester, as we said, will help prepare the plan. As we mentioned earlier, the plan has to be signed by the consulting forester. The WD1 has to be signed. And each year when the application goes in for farmland assessment, the consulting forester will also attest that the plan is being followed. The consulting foresters, they have a set of guidelines that they need to follow to continue to do what they do. If you are not following your plan, they are not going to sign it. So it's very important that woodland owners make sure that they are following the plan. The consulting forester has to report semi-annually to the state on their activities. So there's a lot involved here. One of the things about consulting foresters as well is they do provide woodland management expertise. I know on our property, I've been working with consulting foresters for about 50 years. And I've got to say, every time I go in the woods with a consulting forester, I learn something new. It's amazing the amount of expertise and ideas and management and knowledge that they have that they can share with you. They're great to work with. If you do not have a consulting forester, or if you need one, you can go to the New Jersey State Forestry website, and there is a list of the consulting foresters and their variety of services that they provide. And that list will tell you what the individual foresters do and what areas of the state they work in as well.
And Andy, that list, link to that list was just posted in the chat for those that want to look at it.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Requirements to be a consulting forester, pretty stringent. A consulting forester has to have a 4-year degree from an SAF accredited college. And I believe they're somewhere in the 20s, 20, 25, 30 SAF accredited colleges in the country. New Jersey does not have one. Rutgers used to be accredited. They are not. They have applied for accreditation for urban management, urban forestry, but they do not have a regular forest management program anymore, which is really a shame. But anyway, The consulting forester has to have have graduated with a 4-year degree. In addition to that, they have to work for 2 years and with another already accredited, approved forester, kind of like an internship to actually work in the forest for a couple of years before they can go out on their own. As we mentioned earlier, there is a strict code of ethics by SAF that they have to abide by, and they do have to submit their accomplishments to the New Jersey Forest Service a couple times a year. Then we get into the New Jersey Forest Service. This is the third of, I believe, 5 different groups of people that are involved in this process. The New Jersey Forest Service does receive annually the Woodland Data Forum, the FA1 activity map. So this has to be submitted again by August 1st, and it goes to the tax assessor and to the regional forester. And then they will, the Forest Service will evaluate each application as it comes into them, and they can approve or disapprove. Other things they will do is technically, under rule, they are supposed to inspect every property at least once every 3 years. They want to make sure that you're following your plan. The things you said you're going to do, you are doing. If you are not complying, they will notify the assessor of non-compliance. Also, if you apply for the New Jersey Stewardship Program, there would be an initial application process and initial inspection by the Forest Service. Again, these are great guys. You talk about the consulting foresters, you can learn a lot from them. You can learn a lot from working with the foresters of the State Forest Service as well. You then get involved with the local tax assessor. And this is where you would typically get the annual application forms, the FA1, the GS1, the WD1. These are where you would get the application forms. Normally what happens is the tax assessor will send these to landowners who have had farmland assessment in the past. They usually get them out probably in June sometime to give you time to get them submitted by August 1st. One of the things that's important to note is you do not get it in a timely fashion. Go and pick it up yourself. Don't rely on the tax assessor to get it to you. If you don't get it by July 1st, by all means, go pick it up yourself. You can get them online. Might be better to make an appearance at the tax assessor's office to pick it up. The tax assessor also, once the applications have been submitted, they will review the application. Any comments they might get from the state forest people, they'll take that into account. They also will come out and they will inspect farmland assessed properties. So it's important to, again, you have to have a plan, you got to work plan, you got to be meeting guidelines, because the tax assessor, in addition to the state forester, can and will inspect farmland assessed properties. They can approve or deny the annual applications. And the other thing, that we said earlier, review your requirements for the farmland assessment with them. It's important to have a good relationship with your tax assessor. And again, they do the stewardship application and ongoing inspections. NRCS. Now, this is interesting because Lori and I sat through a 2.5-hour session this morning with the group of New Jersey NRCS people. They had the CAP program, which was a conservation activity plan. The CAP program is now being changed to a CPA instead of CAP, and there are going to be 2 parts to it. One of the advantages of the NRCS plan is that you have become eligible for cost share. Cost share can be for creation of the actual management plan. And as we said earlier, management plans are not inexpensive. So if you can get support in paying for the cost of that, it's great. They also can provide cost share for some of the activities. So when you put together your CAP plan, and again, this is put together, it's a CPA plan now, but if you use an NRCS plan, you have to make sure that a TSP, a technical service provider, an approved forester by NRCS does your plan. They can help talk about not only the cost share for the plan, but also cost share for a lot of the activities that you might do on your plan. And your plan, if you're going to do a tap plan, you might be putting into that many of the, or some of the prescriptions that you can do on the property that are approved by NRCS. And there are many, many, many things that you can do with NRCS. Invasive fencing, deer protection, all kinds of things can go into helping, again, with the health of the forest. And that's all what goes into all of these plans. The NRCS people will also inspect the property. They will approve or deny applications. Typically, if there's a denial, they'll go over the application and tell you where you might be needing to change the application. Well, but they're great people to work with. They will review all of those requirements with you. I know when we went through it with the NRCS people, they were extremely helpful. You know, just sit down with them. They'll work with you on what's needed on your particular property. And again, this cost share. The advantage is this cost share. When you start looking at the three different types of plans we've talked about, the basic woodland management plan, the stewardship plan, and the NRCS plan, what some of the foresters will do is the NRCS plan has been in the past falling somewhere, the specifications fall somewhere between the basic woodland management plan and the forest stewardship plan. So what the forest managers will do, the forest consultants will do, is they will prepare a NRCS plan that will meet the requirements or exceed the requirements of the state stewardship plan. So there are some varieties of plans to consider. The important thing is, again, take advantage of the expertise of the consulting foresters. Reach out to the consulting forester and decide what you want to do with your property. So when we get into the realization of the benefits, as we say, there's to be inspection by the state forester every 3 years. The tax assessor can inspect the property, and you will have an annual review with the consulting forester. Every woodland owner will be meeting with their consulting forester, and typically, if not before, it'll be done before August 1st because the consulting forester has to sign the application. So that's one time a year where the consulting forester will be in contact with the woodland owner. We talked about the cost sharing opportunities that are available. Again, encouraging active devotion. Again, one of the active devotion is part of what we talk about. So with NRCS, we talked about some of the cost sharing opportunities in the activities you do and in the preparation of the plan. So you can go through that, and then unfortunately, one of the things that we don't get cost sharing on is the New Jersey Forest Stewardship Program. When it was approved, provides for cost sharing programs to create plans as well as to implement them. Unfortunately, in New Jersey, the forest stewardship cost sharing plan has not been funded by the legislature. We don't know whether it ever will be or not, but so far it has not been funded. So if you want to get cost sharing, the best thing to do is to get in touch with a consulting forester and then talk about NRCS. Some of the representation that the Forestry Association has, you can see a variety of different organizations that the Forestry Association is involved with. Division of Taxation has a Farmland Assessment Committee that I am a member of. Unfortunately, because of COVID, that committee has not met in a couple of years. We do not know when they will get around to meeting again, but it gives us an opportunity to find out early on, what taxation is considering. We do have an opportunity to have input into that, so it's important that we stay on top of farmland assessment as it comes out of Division of Taxation. We work with SAF, Society of American Foresters, Farm Bureau, New Jersey Outdoor Alliance, Rutgers Cooperative Extension we do a lot with. There's the tree farm program, and again, because of COVID, they usually have an event in June of every year. Haven't had it for the last couple of years because of the COVID. New Jersey Forest Stewardship Committee and the New Jersey Community Forestry Council. So those are some organizations that Forestry Association is part of to enhance our support of woodland owners. The timeline, as you go through some of this, we talk about the evolution of farmland assessment, going back to the constitutional amendment back in 1963, and then the implementing Farmland Assessment Act in 1964. And back then, the first 10 years, there was just a basic $500 requirement. Then we got into the per acre additional income requirement on woodland. It's $500 for the first 5 acres and 50 cents an acre for each acre. Beyond that, 1986, it changed a little bit more, where a farmland assessment in woodlands, we had to have a woodland management plan. So you're starting to see the evolution here. 2013 was the Beck bill, which increased the minimum requirement, income requirement to $1,000 on farmland and $500 on woodland. But again, going to 2015 with a mixed use memo, where if you have 5 acres or more of cropland on your property, regardless of how much forest land you have to have the $1,000 minimum income requirement. And then the Forest Stewardship Program became effective at the end of 2017, and that's what eliminated the income requirement. And again, it eliminates the need for unnecessary cutting. And the Forest Stewardship Program also is designed to maintain property in perpetuity. So again, that's the in perpetuity is a phrase we like to use as we work on management of our properties. So we talk about the multiple benefit activities. You can see a list of things that can go on here. Certainly for the landowner, they get to keep their property, but they have to manage. In perpetuity, again, we stress that. We're stressing the forest health, wildlife habitat, and when we get involved in NRCS in particular, we get to talk a lot about wildlife habitat, things that you can do to increase the habitat for a variety of different species. And we talk about the age of New Jersey forests, where it's a very mature forest. We don't have the young forest. There are wildlife critters that like a young wildlife habitat. And I can remember back when I was a little bit younger, I used to get up in the morning, I could hear the grouse drumming their wings. I just loved to hear it. We had grouse, we had woodcock, we had a lot of other bird species. They've disappeared from a lot of the mature forests in New Jersey. So part of what you want to do is to create habitat that will allow those wildlife species to come back. Protecting soil and water resources is very important. And the state, of course, has recognized the importance of protecting water resources because they have the highlands and the pinelands, and because the state recognized the importance of forests in protecting the water resources. You look at air quality and how the trees through their activities will provide clean air. It's all important stuff. Trying to limit the expansion of non-native invasive plants, and I'll tell you, that's one of the toughest things you can do, trying to get rid of the invasive, but it's part of what having the multiple benefits. And again, preserving natural vistas. You get out there, a lot of people like to go out and be able to look out and see mountains and trees and things like that. So there are a lot of benefits that come from farmland assessment on woodlands that are derived from farmland. Farmland assessment provides benefits for everybody, not just for the landowner. So in a summary, what we want is the landowner should hire a consulting forester in consultation with that forester, prepare a woodland management plan based on the objectives of the landowner. Very importantly, they have to follow the plan. They have to document their activities, and at the end, you would be achieving the goals that the plan. As long as you're actively devoted and working the plan, you should be achieving the goals. And part of that's going to be monitored by the state foresters as well as your own forester. But the ultimate goal is to achieve what you put into the plan. So, in closing, we like this little quote from Gifford Pinchot, who was one of the original foresters. Conservation is the application of common sense to the common problems for the common good. And that's all part of what we are doing with Farmland Assessment on Woodlands. It's conservation for the common good. And it's not just for the landowner, it's for everybody. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, Lori and I will be happy to address any questions you might have.
All right, here we go. So great job, Andy. There's a lot of great comments in the chat I'm going to have to share with you. And there's some things I wanted to address in there too, but let's just get right to the questions. This is for everybody too, but Christine wanted to know if anyone else has recently been visited by the U.S. Forest Service doing an inventory of their trees, specifically species and numbers. So, and Christine, you're saying the U.S. Forest Service versus the New Jersey Forest Service? If you want to clarify that maybe in the Q&A, or okay, yes, so U.S. Forest Service. So has anybody else heard of that happening? I'm assuming you had somebody, Christine? Yes, okay.
That's the first I've heard of the U.S. Forest Service. NRCS will work, again, it's another federal program under the United States Department of Agriculture. People from NRCS will work with property owners to look at the property and if you're going to have a plan, but I'm not aware of them ever coming out to look at a property unless they've been invited to help create a plan.
So a couple things. So Christine is saying about they did contact her a week before, a week after they did tree marking. Bill was saying that they just left a message for him today. Christine said that it was a subcontractor. I'm wondering if this has anything to do with either spotted lanternfly or EAB, that they're trying to do inventory for the ash trees. And certainly spotted lanternfly, because they're working with the USDA APHIS on some of that.
Oh, that's a new one to me.
Yeah. So if we hear of anything else, we will be sure to, put something out in the various ways that we communicate with our members. Okay. So moving right along. So a question about deer. And I wish Pete Fury was on. I don't know if he was able to join us, if he's going to wait for the recording. But so the question is, what was happening to the deer that they are getting sick and dying? Some sort of insect infestation or something? I have a hunting club on my property, and they have been disappointed because the deer population has diminished. Not true everywhere.
There are a couple of different things that have been affecting the deer in different parts of the state. There's the hemorrhagic deer thing with it. There's one that is carried by a little mite, and it doesn't normally get as far as Sussex County where it gets a little bit colder, where the mite doesn't survive. But there are a couple of different diseases that are affecting the deer. Certainly hasn't affected them in Hunterdon County, and so I guess it depends on where in the state you are. But yes, there are a couple of diseases that do affect the deer. Yep. Actually, there have been reports of deer coming down with COVID. I think they found like 7 deer in New Jersey that came down with COVID.
Yeah, I'm going to put a link in the chat on the hemorrhagic disease in deer in New Jersey, HD as it's called. So I'm going to do that shortly. Let me just do that real quick. There's a link in the chat on some more information about that. So another question from Christine, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to defer to you, the expert. So if August 1st falls on a weekend, do you get the extra day or two like we do for tax day on April 15th if it falls on a weekend?
I have never heard them saying that they would extend it. So if if August 1st falls on a Saturday or Sunday, I would make sure that the application is in before that. There's no sense in taking a chance and, oh, they're going to extend it. Get it in ahead of time. In fact, I encourage people, as soon as you have the application completed, get it in. You get too much. You're risking too much if you wait too long. So I would say if it's Saturday or Sunday, get it in no later than the 30th or the 31st of July.
Yeah, not worth it. So back to the deer question or the discussion. Bill was saying that they've had CWD, chronic wasting disease, in Salem. So that's another thing, right? The CWD. I didn't know that was in New Jersey yet.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that attack the deer.
Yeah, that's a bad one. So Robin has a question. And I think I know the answer to this too, but again, you're the expert. So Robin has 10.54 acres of woodland, no cropland. What is my requirement for income? $500 or $1,000?
It's going to be $500 for the first 5 acres and 50 cents an acre for each additional acre. So it's going to be $500 plus $250, somewhere $3. So it's like $503, something like that. If you go the woodland management plan route, if you go with a forest stewardship plan, you don't have to have an income requirement, but there is a forest stewardship plan is going to have various activities that you have to the plan is going to say, year 1, year 2, year 3, you have to do this, that, and the other thing. So it doesn't have to be producing money, but you have to be doing some activity that is part of your plan.
Yeah. So I'm going to combine these two things together. So Marcia wanted to know if a property can have both a woodland management plan and a forest stewardship plan. The answer to that is probably no, right?
No, you're duplicating the effort. The forest stewardship plan is a little bit more comprehensive than the woodland management plan, but the consulting forester is going to do it. A lot of the things that are in a woodland management plan are also going to be in the forest stewardship plan. Forest stewardship plan just goes a little bit further. So there's no need to pay for 2 plans when one's going to do it.
Right. And the other thing that we were talking in the chat is that somebody wanted to go over to the forest stewardship plan because they were having trouble meeting the income requirement. And Clark let them know that they don't have to wait until that 10-year plan expires. You can convert a woodland management plan over to a forest stewardship plan, correct?
Yes, the consulting forester will do that. They're going to charge someone to do the new work. The new plan will be a 10-year plan, so that say you're 5 years into a woodland management plan, the new plan will be a 10-year plan, so you can convert it. Now you're just going to have to pay the consulting forester for a new plan. And if you want to go the NRCS route, apply to NRCS, and if NRCS approves your application, you would then create your plan. With NRCS, you get approval before you create the plan. But if you have a woodland management plan and you want to convert it to a forest stewardship plan or an NRCS plan, you can do it anytime. Again, it's a little bit more involved, but the forest stewardship plan will eliminate the income requirement. The NRCS plan, not necessarily.
Okay.
So the best thing to do is to have a conversation with the consulting forester. They're experts on all this stuff.
Yeah, which is probably the same answer for the next question, which is, are there reliable resources available to assist landowners with controlling invasive species? That would be something they could work with their consulting forester on, right?
Yes, there are. And again, going back to NRCS, there are NRCS programs to help eradicate the invasives that you've got on the property. Typically, the NRCS solutions are going to be pesticide, and you would have to find a pesticide applicator. Many of the consulting foresters can help get you on that particular. Find somebody who will do it. Some of the consulting foresters will do it. If not, they can recommend someone to do it, or the landowner can do it, him or herself.
Okay. Another question, Andy, is what happens if they deny your application, do you have to wait 3 years to reapply? This is Anne had that question.
No, I think the important thing is if the application is denied, find out why. There are going to be reasons why it's denied. So it can be denied by the Forest Service, it can be denied by the assessor. In any case, you want to find out why it has been denied. And again, the application is going to be prepared in conjunction with your forest management plan. Your consulting forester has to sign the farmland assessment application. So they are going to be a resource for you as well. If it's denied, certainly if the consulting forester has signed your application, they are going to want to know why it was denied as well. So, again, consulting foresters have tremendous resources, tremendous insight, tremendous information. Use the consulting foresters. That's why they're there.
Very good. Is pasture considered cropland? Christopher wants to know.
Yes, I believe it is.
Yeah, again, probably just double check with your tax assessor. And
that's going to be, if you have land that doesn't have trees on it, it's going to be considered cropland for farmland assessment purposes. If it's pasture land, you're going to have that $1,000 income requirement.
Okay. And then Sue, hi Sue, by the way, I saw her, 2 weeks ago. She wants to know if we can do a backyard forestry program reviewing what is being done in other states and how, if New Jersey woodland owners can use some of these ideas. So that's kind of a cool idea to think about some of that. The NRCS programs, this is part 2 of Sue's question. Are they appropriate to all states?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
In fact, the 2.5 hours we went through this morning, talking about the changes in the programs. Evan was talking about, this is a nationwide program, so New Jersey has to squeeze what they want into the national program. So the NRCS program is national. And going back to the earlier question about what other states are doing, it's very hard to compare what we are doing and can do in New Jersey to what other states are doing, because we don't have the forest resources here that other states have. We don't have a real good lumber mill in New Jersey. So anybody who is having a timber sale is going to have to send their timber out of state to get milled. States like Pennsylvania, New York, they've got mills in their states, they can do it. So what we can do in New Jersey is very limited because we are the most densely populated state in the country. We have more people per square mile in New Jersey than any other state. Our entire state is considered urban, even though we are, there is so much forest. When we went through the statistics earlier, where 40% of the state is still forested. We're a small state. We're an urban state. Our properties are broken up. We don't have large contiguous properties of woodland. So what we can do here is very different than what you can do in other states.
Well said. So I'm just going to read something Clark put in the chat, because I think this is important too, that he said he would like to stress that it is the landowner who sets the priorities in their stewardship plan. If they want songbirds, the forester creates the plan to that end. One forester told me a client asked him to write a plan to emphasize fall colors. So it's really the landowner that's driving the activity and what they want. So that was a good comment. Thank you, Clark.
Yeah, the input for the plan is it's between the landowner and the forester, and the landowner is going to have objectives and the forester will help meet them.
Yeah. And if anybody else has any other questions, please put them in the Q&A. We're happy to answer them. We still have a few more minutes. I'm going to address, Laura had a question to everybody about, is there an average tax savings by being enrolled in one of the plans? So I know that's a tough question to answer. It's very specific to the property.
There is not an average. Every property is different, and the tax assessor will, they have criteria that they can use when we go through the tax assessment, the committee I mentioned that I'm part of, they are looking at soil types, and the soils are categorized, I believe it's A through D. So there's a variety of soil types. So there are a lot of things that go into that. So there's no, one size fits all.
Yeah. Yeah. And some people have put some examples of what they've saved in the chat. So, but again, it is definitely.
Any way you look at it, it is considerable.
Yeah. And Lori mentioned too that it depends on the tax rate of your area. Every area has different tax rates. So that's a good point. So Carrie wants to know, is there a minimum amount of property needed for a stewardship plan?
5 acres.
Okay.
And in New Jersey, it's the minimum of 5 acres. You have to submit a map of the property if you have 7 acres or less. So it gets a little tricky, but yeah, you have to have 5 acres of qualifying land. And again, if you have 5 acres, there's nothing on it but trees and vegetation, you're okay. If you have 5 acres and you got a house on it, you don't have 5 acres of qualifying land.
I believe that's all the questions we have. Again, if there's anything else for people, now's the time. Oh, here's one. Sorry, last one. Carrie wants to know, can you cancel a plan after a few years if need, or land being sold? That might be a good time to talk rollback.
Yes, if land is taken out of farmland assessment, depending on, it gets a little tricky again, you need to talk to the tax assessor. You can take it out of farmland assessment. If you convert the use of the property to development of some sort, whether it be residential or commercial, there will be a 2-year rollback. So the year that you take it out of farmland assessment, you would pay whatever the normal rate would be plus the 2 previous years. They call it a 2-year rollback. It's actually 3 if you change the use of the property. If you take it out of farmland assessment, again, talk to the tax assessor, but you might not get charged the rollback. Going forward, you will be paying whatever the normal rate is. Also, I might mention if a property is farmland assessed and it is sold, the new owner can continue under farmland assessment under the plan that's in place there. If the new owner takes it out of farmland assessment, then they would be responsible for any of the rollback taxes. So it's whatever a party ends up taking it out of farmland assessment would be responsible for the rollback.
Very good. Anything else before we wrap it up? Last chance for questions.
I see there's an awful lot in chat.
There's a lot of chat. We've been busy.
Yeah. Well, we try to cover as much as we can. So we answer all the questions in the basic presentation. So I always like to think that if there aren't questions, we've done our job.
Yep, exactly. Are you want one more, since it's only 8:17? Can I give you one more question? Sure. That just came in? Okay. And so before I do that, I just want to let, for those that want to leave, of course, no problem. This is being recorded, and you will receive a copy of the recording in an email. So just know that. So Anne-Marie wants to know, can you apply having several contiguous properties with the same owner, that total acreage for the acreage requirements? I know we went over this in our original farmland assessment presentation. Yes.
If you have contiguous properties that are not divided by a main road or whatever, yes, they would matter. And if you have properties that are contiguous in 2 or more municipalities, they would apply. And you can have one plan that covers the entire parcel. You would be paying taxes to however many towns you have property in, but you can have one plan as long as the properties are contiguous. You can have one plan. We also like to do an advertisement on behalf of the Forestry Association. We do have a newsletter that goes out periodically. In addition to Backyard Forestry, we do have periodic member-only meetings to go over topics that are of particular interest to woodland owners. Well, Backyard Forestry has a wider audience. For just the audience of woodland owners, we do have some member-only meetings. And we usually, unfortunately, we have not had our annual meeting the last couple of years because of COVID. We'd like to get back to that. We're not quite sure whether we're going to do that. We were thinking about postponing this year's until April. That has not been confirmed yet. A lot depends on whether we could find a place or whatever. But in any case, we do. We do look for membership. We do provide a lot of services to woodland owners, as well as people who are interested in preserving our forests in general. So
Yep.
come join us.
Absolutely. Right. And if we do, we did our member meetings I think the last 2 years we did it online, right? The annual
Yes.
meeting. If we do it in person, which, if we wait till April, latter part of April, we'll be looking to do something outside. You don't have to be a member to join, to attend that meeting. But we'll try to convince you to become a member, of course. But yeah, that's open to everybody if we get to do it. So hopefully we can. So, do you know anything about farmland preservation versus farmland assessment? If there's a property that's under farmland preservation, how come they're not automatically farmland assessed?
No, you still have to apply for farmland assessment.
And that's because of the law, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's preserved, but it still needs to be managed.
Yep. So Jonathan has a good question too. Is there a difference between a federal stewardship plan versus a New Jersey stewardship plan?
Might be referring to the NRCS plan, because NRCS has plans. I believe there was a forest one. I'm not sure it's around anymore, but the NRCS plan would be a federal plan, and that's the one that, as I said, that the process for that is changing, and details of that will be coming out in a couple of weeks.
Perfect. So Jim wants to ask you about a sawmill, portable sawmill. He's looking to buy one. An HM 130 Max portable sawmill. Any thoughts on that?
The only ones I'm familiar with are the ones that are made by Woodmiser.
Yeah.
They are very good, and they have a variety of different. They got some that are portable, mobile. You pull behind your pickup truck or whatever, and there are other ones that are just more permanent. You set them up, and they come with a variety of different options on different ways to do it. So
yeah,
they're fun to operate. It takes a while to learn how to use them.
Yeah, in the past, right, last couple tree farm days that we participated in, we've actually had demos, right, of some of the portable sawmills,
yes,
like on your property. So
yeah.
hopefully we'll be able to do that again soon. That'd be kind of neat. So, so this is a great question. What does the state do / how do they manage their forest acreage? Wendy adjoins some Green Acres property and is questioning what the state does on their land.
It depends on a particular piece of property, and I guess the most notable one is Sparta Mountain, where they were creating habitat for the golden wing warbler. A lot of controversy about that, but the state manages their property as well. They don't, unfortunately, the state does not have the human resources or the financial resources to do as much management. And that's one of the things when you look at the 62% of land it's owned by private woodland owners. Private woodland owners have a lot more opportunity to manage their properties. And the private landowners are going to manage with their own objectives in mind, where the state properties, they're going to be, state foresters are going to develop. Like I said, with the golden wing warbler, that was a project that they're trying to preserve the habitat for the golden wing warbler. We'll also say that the habitat for the golden wing warbler is going to be the same habitat that will be for woodcock and grouse and many other bird species. So, the state is going to look at what their objectives are on any particular piece of property, and they will manage it accordingly.
Very good. Okay, I think we're able to wrap it up at this point. One thing I'd like to just say is that our next backyard forestry program is the third, it's always the third online, is always the third Thursday of the month. In March, that happens to be March 17th, which is, I believe that's March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, St. Patrick's Day. So all I can say is that the topic that we select, and you'll find out about it shortly, it will be something green. How's that?
How to make green beer.
How to make green beer. You have to wear green. Of course, we don't see them, so we'll have to wear green. But hopefully, you can all join us a month from now, and we're here for you if you have any other questions.
Thank you, everybody.
Hope to see you next month, if not sooner, and stay in touch, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Andy. Great job.
Yep. Thank you, Lori.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.